October 2nd. Well, no. This is, look at that. So if you want to get really confused, it's bad enough we live in Phoenix, okay? So the longer ending is at 8 a.m. Kuala Lumpur time, because they're based over in Malaysia. Kuala Lumpur time. And the Ephesians 3:9 debate is at 11 p.m., I guess the same day. Yeah. So there's one at 7:40 at 8 a.m. in Kuala Lumpur, and then 11 p.m. in Kuala Lumpur. That's interesting. So it's 24 hours. Because it's going to be tomorrow evening and then Saturday morning. So we'll put the links up for the two debates on the Textus Receptus. And I was going to, if I ran out of stuff to talk about, I was going to talk about some of the background for this debate. Let me just go ahead and let me just say one thing. For those of you who are confused or don't understand the importance of the debates we're doing tomorrow and Friday night and Saturday morning in the United States, I have mentioned to you before that as far back as 2017, when I was in Wittenberg, Germany, I was sitting with some young men at one of the better places to get a cheeseburger. At least you could get a cheeseburger back then. Who knows what's going on in Germany now? But this is back when you could travel the world and it was a different place. And over a cheeseburger and big chips, as they call them in Europe, French fries, we call them here. I was talking with some of the young men from the conference that I was speaking at, which was the German Shepherds Conference, the German Shepherds Conference. And they were talking to me about the Textus Receptus position coming into churches there in Germany, which is strange, but it's been going for quite some time. I have spoken about this issue apologetically, pastorally, textually for a number of years. And I think it's extremely important. I think it's important for us to be consistent in responding even to people within our own circles and being consistent in the standards that we utilize, whatever group we might be dealing with. This is an opportunity for you to think deeply and to consider one simple thing. Who is being consistent? Now, there is a level of consistency in TR-onlyism, but it is the consistency that caused the riots in North Africa when Jerome more accurately translated the name of the plant that grew over Jonah's head. There was a riot. And the Greek Septuagint had not used the most accurate term. And when Jerome translated the Latin Vulgate, he used a more accurate term. It resulted in a riot. Now, that's the same situation we're dealing with here. That is, do you have a traditional text and say, since God has used this text for so long, it is inviolable? And we have to have an absolutely stable text. We cannot have any questions. There cannot be any notes in the side margin that say some manuscripts say this and some manuscripts say that, as every King James version of the Bible has always had, and the original had many more than are now printed today. There are many, many people who believe that is a negative thing. There should be no textual notes. There should be no, when the New King James says NU says this and TR says this and MAJ says this or whatever. No, that should not be there, because we cannot allow for any issues in the transmission of the text of Scripture. There has to be one stable, unchanging text. That's how the Septuagint was viewed initially. then that was replaced in the Western Church by the Latin Vulgate. So when Erasmus comes along and he recognizes that there are problems in the Vulgate, provides his own translation. No. And then the Reformers emphasizing the Greek. Oh, no. We've got the Vulgate. We've had the Vulgate for 1,100 years. You can't tell me that God has allowed us to use a corrupted text for 1,100 years. So there was Vulgate onlyism. There was Septuagintal onlyism. And now we have TR onlyism. And the argument is that the TR is providentially preserved and did not come from textual critical study. The problem is it did. It came from inconsistent textual critical study. It came from textual critical materials that are 1/1,000th of what we have today. But the reality is anyone who reads Erasmus knows that he reasoned through passages the way that we reason through passages today. And many times when it came to the Greek text, he said, I'm putting this in my text, but let the reader decide. These are the possibilities. Let the reader decide. So he had no dream that he was being involuntarily and providentially utilized by God to restore to restore the apostolic text. So TR onlyism is not a textual critical methodology, just like Vulgate onlyism wasn't and Septuagintal onlyism wasn't. It is not, by their own teaching, something that is meant to restore the text. The text has been preserved, just as the Septuagint had been preserved, just as the Vulgate had been preserved. The TR has been preserved. It's the ultimate authority. And so here's what you're going to hear. You're going to hear a discussion tomorrow night about the longer ending of Mark. Now, there are multiple endings of Mark. There is the no ending of Mark, that is Mark 16:8. There is a shorter ending, which is a summary statement that almost no one believes is original, but it's short. You've got the Freer Logion and Codex Washingtonianus, and a few other references to that. And then you have the longer ending with all of its variants and variant forms. It has a lot of textual variants within it. But Mark 16, 9 through 20, in its various manifestations. And I'm going to present the textual data, and I'm going to point out that the reason that the majority of New Testament textual scholars today believe that the longer ending, which is found in the Textus Receptus, is secondary, is due to these reasons. These are the manuscripts, these are the ancient versions, and the simple reality that there would be no reason to have the other endings that do exist if the longer ending had always been there. Jerome said it wasn't. Eusebius said it wasn't. There are other sources that demonstrate that though the longer ending is very primitive and very early, that there is good reason to believe that it was constructed because of the abrupt nature of the ending of the Gospel of Mark, and I'll provide some reasoning as to why Mark might have chosen to end the Gospel the way that he did. But that's a textual critical presentation, and if this was a textual critical debate, then the other person might be a Byzantine priority person, and so they're going to lay out why they believe the Byzantine manuscripts should take priority. Maybe a majority text person, very, very similar, but not necessarily the same in their understanding, and then you reason between those positions. That cannot happen tomorrow night, because it's not a position that is seeking to restore the text. It is a position that starts with the Textus Receptus and then looks at the data and says, well, this data is right because it's what's in the Textus Receptus, and that data is wrong because it's not what's in the Textus Receptus. And that's not a textual critical position. And the reality is that if every single manuscript that contains the longer ending did not contain the longer ending, but contained the freer logion, my opponent would still hold to the longer ending because that's what's in the TR. Now, I would argue historically that would mean the TR wouldn't contain it, but that's not the point. I'm looking at historically, which means you have to look at it from the point of history and then development of time through history. The TR only position can't do that. It has an established text. And then you do with the data what you need to do with the data. So what we'll see in doing a two-part debate is that if Dr. Riddle argues that the predominance of the longer ending in the majority of manuscripts of the Gospel of Mark should be determinative of its inclusion in Scripture, then the second part of the debate on Ephesians 3:9, where the TR contains a reading that is unknown to the Byzantine tradition till at the earliest maybe one, maybe two manuscripts, but it's not the Byzantine reading. It's not the majority reading. It's not the reading of the ancient church. In other words, all of the argumentation that would have been for the longer ending would now be against the TR reading, but that won't change anything because there are no facts that can change any TR reading. There are no manuscripts. We could find 100 dated, notarized copies of the Gospel of Mark from the year 95 that all end at Mark 16:8, that actually go to the end, because we don't have any papyri. The end of books were notoriously lost because of the nature of books and how they were made. And if there's going to be damage, and there's normally damage after 2,000 years, that's what's going to be lost. We have no papyri that contain the end of Mark, so there's nothing to look at there. The earliest manuscripts we have are Sinaiticus and Vaticanus, and they do not contain it. But even if we had 100 new manuscripts discovered tomorrow that we can date specifically to the year 95 that are complete Markan manuscripts, and they all end at Mark 16:8, that would mean nothing to the TR only position. Nothing. Now, if we found those 100 manuscripts that were dated to AD 95 and they contained the longer ending, it would mean everything to me. I go, bingo, there it is. There's put it in there, baby. Give the information. I want to know what Mark wrote. That's all there is to it. That's all there is. That would so overwhelmingly change the evidence that I would go, boom. And here's the point. From their side, no, but see, you just have to keep changing things. And from my perspective is, no, we always have to be wanting to know what the apostles wrote. That's what's inspired. That's originalism, not traditionalism. The two are not the same, and they are not consistent with one another. And I hope that's what comes out. Hope that comes out very clearly in the debate. So I'll put the links up. As I said, I'm not even sure what this time is for me. Did you click on one of them? Let me look here real quick. There's actually one person waiting. And that's probably me now. There was two before. This says October 2nd, 5 p.m. So if YouTube is giving me my time, which I guess it does, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Daylight time. Right. 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Would we stop playing with the clocks? Stop it. Just stop it. And then the second one is 8 a.m. my time. So that'd be 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Saturday. So there you go. So there you go. I hope they will be useful. I hope they will go smoothly. So please pray for the, it's technology, it's the internet, it's max headroom at times, and we have had a few minor solar storms recently. I actually have a thing on my phone that goes beep, beep, and warns about solar storms. So like, you never know. So let's hope that all happens and that it's clear and that the issues are laid out completely. That's the important part. That's the important part.